What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Breakdown. Finally, guys, big movies are starting to open up in theaters. Theaters are starting to allow higher capacities. And yes, guys, I have gone back to the movies. Today, we're going to be talking about Cruella, which I did go out into the theaters to see, even though you can watch it on Disney Plus if you pay the $30 premiere access. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go out and see this one. You know, the trailers look pretty good. I love Emma Stone. And guys, I have to say, I'm going to tell you right off the top, it was worth it to see it in theaters. I'm very, very excited and delighted to tell you guys about this movie because it surpassed my expectations. Now, first things first, I do have to say, my expectations weren't that high, even though, yes, it is Disney. Yes, it is one of those live action retellings of one of their animated movies. But this one is more on the origins of Cruella from 101 Dalmatians, which kind of gave me the part of the reason I wasn't sure about this film was that, you know, we had Maleficent, and I was not a big fan of Maleficent, you know, even though Angelina Jolie did a great job as Maleficent. I just didn't like that they kind of took away the mystery and the evilness of that character, and I just didn't want them to do that for Cruella, which as a kid, I was kind of scared of her when I watched that movie because she was pretty evil and scary looking. But yeah, so this film, guys, obviously stars Emma Stone as Cruella de Vil, and it is directed by Craig Gillespie, I hope I'm saying that right, who did movies such as I, Tonya, and let me tell you, I did get kind of a I, Tonya vibe from this. And yeah, coming out of the theater, I do have to say that I was thoroughly surprised. I was very much entertained, and I walked away thinking, wow, once again, Emma Stone proving that she is a big-time actress. I mean, we know that she can act. We know that she can do funny things. We know that she can do the musicals. But pulling off the character of Cruella is something that I was kind of nervous about for her. And she proved me wrong. She proved me that she can do almost any role and she can fit right in and absolutely stamp her presence on any film, but also create her own stylized version of certain characters, which that's the big word for this movie, guys, is stylized. Cruella to me was such a stylized film in such a good way. It felt so unique. It felt so different. It felt like something that I hadn't seen before, which is something that's rare these days, I think, because a lot of the times movies feel like, oh, they're just using typical tropes. And there was a little bit of that. There's a little bit of predictability in this film, but there are some surprises as well. So I will say that starting off, guys, the beginning of the movie, I did not think it was going so great. I thought this movie's a little slow to start, but once again, this is the origin of Cruella, so they have to start somewhere. And it wasn't until Emma Stone's character, which is named Estella, and Cruella at the same time, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. It wasn't until she really became Cruella that the movie really started to pick up. And it wasn't until those scenes that you see from the trailer where it's just this like fashion war and it's just like, you know, her taking down, you know, this big bad character from Emma Thompson, which is called the Baroness, which we'll talk about her in a little bit. But it's not until those moments start to come that the movie really picks up. So this is one of those films where I can actually say that it's one of those rare films that starts here and really just goes up. You don't really see that too often. Most movies will either just start at the bottom and stay there, or they'll start high and then they end on a low note. This was one of those films that started out kind of shaky for me, but as the movie kept going, it got better and better. And then by the end of it, as the credits start to roll, I'm like, God dang it, I loved it. It had such a good time, very entertaining. I might even go see it a second time, and I never thought that I would be saying that. So once again, guys, definitely something that I enjoyed and I thought that, you know, was worth supporting in the theaters for. Now, obviously, some of the big positives of this is the acting. Now, Emma Stone is perfect casting in this role. Like I said, one of the biggest questions that I had was, would she be able to fulfill this Cruella role, right? Kind of a big, bombastic character. And my gosh, Emma Stone just fit it perfectly. The little nuances from her little, like, you know, the way she shapes her mouth, the way she moves her eyebrows, and the way she makes certain faces that just give you that Cruella evil vibe, but at the same time, she's like sophisticated and kind of classy, and it's just, I don't even know how she does it. It really is unexplainable. She just has this like vibe and ambience to her that just like makes you believe everything that's going on, but also makes you like hate, but also love this character at the same time. It's very, very hard to explain, but it's something that when you see it on a film screen, you're just like, wow, now that's great acting. Now, she wasn't the only great actress in this. Obviously, you have Emma Thompson in there. The supporting cast for this was great. Emma Thompson did great as the Baroness. I thought she was She was definitely like the strong, mean figure that Cruella needed to kind of go up against and kind of pull her Cruella-ness out of, right? Like for her to become that character, she needed someone big to topple down, and Emma Thompson definitely brought that. As well as, some of the other side characters like Paul Walter Hauser and Joel Fry, who played, the henchmen, Jasper and Horace. Those two characters, I just remember them being bumbling fools in the movie, right? Always messing up, always letting the dogs get away. But in here, they were giving so much depth. I mean, in one aspect, right, Horace is, at first, I was like, is this guy just going to be like the funny, bumbling idiot that he is in the movies? And they absolutely made him more than just that. Like, Paul Walter Hauser in this role shows that he can do more than just be the funny, chubby guy, right? He's showing that he can give a character so much, charisma that, like, by the end of it, you end up loving this character, even though he's supposed to be like the silly guy that just, bumbles around, right? He gave such depth to that character that I never thought that I would feel at all. But hey, by the end of it, I was laughing along with him, and it was one of my secondary favorite characters. Joel Fry as Jasper, I thought was great because I never expected that character to be anything more than just a henchman, and he brought some groundness to Cruella. He tried to ground Cruella as much as he could in the story that I thought was very much needed, right? Because sometimes she's doing all these crazy bombastic things that you're like, you need someone to be like, hey, bring it down a notch. And for Joel Fry as Jasper to bring that, I thought was really great. Also, the young lady that played young Estella was great. I thought she looked like a young Chloe Grace Moretz. It took me back to the Kick-Ass days. I don't know what her name is. She was great, though. I thought she did a fantastic job. And all those characters, obviously, Horace and Jasper, along with all the little subtle hints that they threw in there from the original 101 Dalmatians. Most of the hints are throughout the film, so you'll be able to see it at the beginning, middle, and end, that you're like, oh, wait, yeah, this is kind of like a little Easter egg for what the 101 Dalmatians was. So, down from the car to the dogs, the Dalmatians, obviously, like, those little things are sprinkled in there nicely throughout the film, subtly, so that it's not necessarily like, oh, yeah, well, we're shoving it in your face. Don't forget, this is Cruella from the animated movie. Like, this film is very unique. It has its own vibe, but at the same time, it's still Disney. It's still the Cruella from 101 Dalmatians. So they definitely had that balance there, done very well. And with that said, I thought the story overall was actually very good. Now, like I said, it is a little slow to start. So the beginning of the movie, I thought the plots were kind of weak, but as the movie picks up, the middle and the end of the film do kind of help those first plot points that I thought were kind of weak come up and meet the challenge of what this movie was. And I was actually surprised to see that there are some dark elements to this movie. There were definitely some times in this film where I was like, wait a minute, is this PG or PG-13? Because they're talking about some dark stuff. They're talking about killing some people. They're talking about burning people. Like hold on. But at the end of the day, like I said, they did a very good job of walking that line of this is Disney, but also we're taking our own spin on it. So I really enjoy those dark elements. It shows that Disney's willing to take a few chances and put a few things in as long as it helps the story out, which I think it did as the movie went on. And guys, honestly, part of the reason that I decided to make this review is because I need to tell you guys how good the score and the soundtrack is for this movie. The music in this is absolutely amazing, guys. You're talking about some great songs covered by other artists and stylized to fit more with the movie, but still classic, iconic songs. So to go along with some great scores, like with certain scenes when they're ramping up or when you're definitely got to feel like, Cruella's in this point of her life right now. Now, as we talk about the cinematography, and as I just mentioned, the scenery, the props, and everything that was used, that was a huge plus in the film. But it also kind of led me to some of the, negatives of the film, I guess you could say, where there were a few inconsistencies that I could notice at least. This film does take place in 1970s London, where the reign of high fashion was going on. You definitely feel like you're in that age, but there are inconsistencies with certain scenes and certain things that Cruella does, because there's technology being used that I don't think might have been that readily available in the 1970s. Like, we're talking about, you have the sets and the props were all 1970s, but then you have certain technology. Like, there's a scene where music is going down, and you have, Jasper and Horace, like, using these sound mixers that seem a little too advanced for that time. I mean, it almost looks like Horace is like DJing, but I mean, really all he's doing is just pressing buttons, supposedly. Yeah, so that kind of didn't make sense. So there's that. And then there's also like, security cameras and security laser beams that kind of seem a little too advanced for the 70s, at least for most people to have. So, and certain technologies where they hijack a camera, and I'm like, this is the 70s. Like, do they really have that? I mean, I could be wrong, but those were some things where I'm like, wait a minute, we're supposed to be in like the 70s. Why is this like turning into like some James Bond thing? Like, what? So there was some inconsistencies with that. Nothing too big. It took me out of the movie for a little bit, but not enough for me to just be like, all right, it's not believable at all anymore. You've lost me completely. No, no, nothing like that. A few other things that just kind of bugged me a little bit were that there were some things that happened in the movie that just felt a little too convenient, right? Like certain things happen at a certain time, just in time. Like, oh, she was expecting that to happen. And, certain things like that were like the writers, I feel like, just kind of looked for an easy way out, or they wrote themselves into a corner. So they had to, like make something happen, and it just so happened that it went this way. And so there were certain things like that, and to me it just felt a little far-fetched and a little bit silly. A lot of them take place in the beginning, and then as the movie picks up, it definitely fixes itself and it's not an issue. But just a few minor gripes that I had. But other than that, I can't say that I really disliked much of it. Like I said, the movie just builds and builds and gets better and better. And honestly, like, I loved Emma Stone in this. Like, the outfits that they gave her, the looks that she had, like, she just pulled off this role. Like, almost, I compare it to what Margot Robbie did for Harley Quinn. How everyone sees like, oh, Margot Robbie's perfect for Harley Quinn. This is exactly what I'm seeing. Emma Stone is perfect for Cruella, and I would have never have guessed it, but that's what it turns out to be. So guys, definitely one to check out in the theaters. Like I said, you can also see it on Disney Plus for a $30 premiere access fee. It's up to you guys, but I will say it's a lot better than I anticipated. I'm excited the movies are back in the theaters and we're back to doing reviews, so hopefully I'll be doing some more. So yeah, there it is, guys, the real breakdown on Cruella. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next one.